And this is also a great way to decide which glycol you're going to use as well, or other type of chemical exfoliation. If you can see that they're kind of reactive to the lactic in this, you know you can kind of scale back a little bit, which is why we're choosing the cocoa enzyme, one of our most gentle exfoliations.
That's a great segue into just enhancing the customization options that we have. If you are seeing that he's pinking up a little bit from an AHA, then you can always pivot and do one of our enzymes. And then also within the enzyme collection with Circadia, we have 3 different flavors or 3 different strengths of the enzyme as well. So any of the 3 enzymes can be utilized in this particular step. Today, I think you've chosen to use the cocoa enzyme.
Delightful smell.
Yes.
Clients will want to eat it, but don't let them.
So the cocoa enzyme, the raspberry enzyme, and the zymase all contain bromelain, papain, and trypsin, which are all 3 enzymes that are going to break down different portions of the desmosome, or that snap that holds our cells together. So what I love about this, and also utilizing it with the Hydrafacial, is that all of the enzymes are very particular as to what protein they break down. So it's not going to create any irritation or any of the wounding that some of your traditional stronger acids can do. And in this formulation, we're also adding in a raw Hershey's cocoa powder, which has amazing anti-inflammatory properties. So really sticking with that redness reduction, sticking with the antibacterial and anti-inflammatory components. But if you do have somebody who is a little bit more hyperpigmented, maybe a higher keratinose skin, would you choose the zymase or the raspberry?
Oh, yeah. Zymase is one of my favorite enzymes. I feel like it's very underused. It's a triple vitamin C citrus enzyme. It's great for firming the skin, antioxidant, and brightening the skin. So I think it's very universal. A little bit more on the spicy side, but it leaves such a beautiful glow on the skin afterwards. And we kind of talked about mixology earlier. One way you can boost this is with the almond milk cleanser if you're working with pigmentation. But if you have a client that's more sensitive, we also can activate our enzymes with our functional mist as well. So we've got the licorice and bearberry if you're treating pigmentation, or if you have a client who's a little more red, you can definitely use the aloe and calendula.
Which is one of my favorites to do, the cocoa and the aloe mist.
How's this feeling for you?
It's great, smells great.
Your clients might notice a little bit of tingling when this begins. That's completely normal. I like to give a scale for my clients. So 1 to 5, ask them where they're at. You can always remove an enzyme or a peel early if the clients are experiencing any discomfort. One of the other things to note about the enzymes is they must stay moist in order to stay active. If they're drying on the skin, or if you're noticing it hardening, it's no longer working. So we're gonna occlude this with a wet 4x4 just to make sure that moisture stays in the skin and on the enzyme.
And in some of our other protocols, we do suggest to keep them wet and also warm. But Julie, because we're using so many different exfoliating mechanisms, can you kind of talk about just utilizing the water?
Yeah, so as we mentioned, we're not using any hot towels or a lot of heat into the skin because we don't want to cause any further inflammation or any more redness into the skin. So as long as the enzyme's active, it can be active with these wet 4x4s, that's good enough. And if you notice them drying out in the middle of the treatment, you can definitely re-wet them or add new fresh ones.
So broad generalization, we would categorize the cocoa enzyme for having more of those calming and antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties, and it also has the lowest activity of the 3 enzymes that we're using. The raspberry would be our middle. We are also adding in the red raspberry seed extract, which is going to add natural azelaic acid, and it's going to be really beneficial for more of that hyperpigmented skin type. And then as Julie mentioned, the zymase contains different forms of vitamin C, and it also has the highest activity level of all of the enzymes that we're using. So you can really pick and choose and customize, which we've been talking about for all of the 3 Hydrafacial modules, how great customization options are. But you can use any of the 3 enzymes depending on the skin type for this particular enhancement option.
Mix them together. I love the raspberry and the zymase together.
Mixology on top of mixology. Traditionally, we would leave any of the 3 enzymes on for anywhere between 7 to 12 minutes. but because we're adding it with the Hydrafacial, how long are you going to leave the enzyme on for?
So we're going to leave it on for about 5 minutes, but since we have this occluded with the 4x4, you definitely want to peek in a couple times, just make sure they're not getting red because you can't see that through here. With our male clients, one thing to note, if they do have a beard, they may have just shaven, that day or the day before, so you might notice some what I call hot spots on the beard. You can absolutely remove the enzyme earlier from those areas and leave it on the rest of the face if it's okay.
And speaking of shaving, what about any ingrown hairs? I know it happens quite frequently. The cocoa enzyme, would that be your go-to?
Oh yeah, it's a great way to soften up that skin around the hair, and then if you have tweezer, you can go ahead and ask them if it's okay if you pull it out for them. A lot of my clients suffer from PCOS, and that's one thing I like to notice, and they actually really appreciate it when I ask them if they would like me to remove the hair for them. So this is a great way to prep the skin for that.
Yeah, that's a great insider tip. So with PCOS, and I guess we haven't really talked much about contraindications with Hydrafacial, but would they still be a good candidate for this more calming treatment?
Oh, absolutely. This would actually probably be ideal. But it'll be great because especially in your higher fits, you may, a lot of women struggle with hyperpigmentation in that area from self-extracting and from self-tweezing of the hairs, and they don't properly prep their skin, as we mentioned. That's why I would use the cocoa. So it's a great way to help to lessen that pigmentation with both the manual and the chemical exfoliation.
And for this particular treatment, I know we are going to continue on with the traditional deluxe options with the Beta HD and the glycel, but if our client was presenting with more inflammation, you can also substitute those out for just the cocoa?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're always going to want to check in on your client's skin and remove any step that's necessary. You can also do a little patch test, on the face just to see if it's reactive, but you can absolutely skip that step.
And even already with the cocoa, it looks great.
Mm-hmm. I love using these because it helps to remove the enzyme. The enzyme should not be thick and like it should be able to move on the skin, very viscous. Just removed it all.
And I know with some of the different things that we've maybe seen out on social media, there are definitely different consistencies in the masks. So we do have another module where we specifically talk about the enzymes and we talk about proper mixing ratios, and we also have a visual of what it should look like. Today ours was a bit thinner, and just a quick note is all of the enzymatic activity, the bromelain, the papain, and the trypsin are all in the powder.
Yes.
So if you make it a little bit looser like we did today, then you're going to have less enzymatic activity. And again, we're doing so many different exfoliations. That's why we chose that. But if you are looking to do this as a standalone treatment, ideally your consistency would be a little bit thicker, but you can always look at the previously recorded module for that.